Anne Frank was a 13-year-old girl born in Frankfurt, Germany in June 1929. She lived there until she was 4 years old. Her father, Otto Frank, immigrated to Holland in 1933, followed by her mother, Edith Frank, in September the same year. Anne and her sister, Margaret Frank, stayed with their grandmother in the German city Aachen until they too moved to Holland. There she stayed at the Montessori nursery school until she was 6, after which she started first grade. Anne Frank displayed a brazen attitude in school, getting in trouble with her maths teacher for often being an incorrigible chatterbox. Even before she had to go into hiding, her family went through anxieties and hardships. The Second World War began and the Germans arrived in Holland. Anti-Semitic rules were imposed on the Jewish, restricting their freedom. Jews, including Anne, were required to distinguish themselves from other citizens, prohibited from riding cars, entering specific places, and had unreasonable curfews imposed on them. July 5, 1942, Margaret received a call-up notice from Protection Squads, which was Adolf Hitler's personal bodyguard unit. It meant she had to report to the concentration camps, and that terrified the Frank family. They decided to move to their planned hiding place as soon as possible, along with Hermann van Pels and his family, who was Otto's good friend and business partner. Their hiding place was located in Otto's office building, which they dubbed the Secret Annex, because the entrance leading to the Secret Annex is inconspicuous and there is plenty of room inside. The Secret Annex made for a great hiding place, and described it as damp and lopsided. It also claims it to most likely be the best hiding place in all of Holland. The residents of the Secret Annex obtained food via the help of certain volunteers who sympathized with the Jews' predicament at the time. Usually the volunteers delivered raw ingredients such as large stocks of raw potatoes or peas, which the residents would have to prepare themselves. The Secret Annex dwellers always had to be wary with the amount of noise they made in the annex, considering they lived in a section of commonly visited office building where they could easily be overheard and turned over to sinister authorities. Thus, specific times were allotted for each person to use the bathroom and other facilities. Otto suggested to his daughters that they continue their education so that when they presumably go back to their normal lives, they wouldn't be too far behind academically. So the volunteers brought Anne and Margaret schoolbooks so they could study, as well as storybooks that could be read at their own leisure. Anne was also enthusiastic about writing her own novels such as Ellen the Fairy and Caddy's Life, and often composed poems to give to people on their birthdays. Among her family, Anne was only fond of her father at first. She describes him as the most adorable father she has ever seen. She liked him because he was kind, considerate, and always did his best to be fair to Anne when her mother wasn't. This brings us to Anne's mother, Edith. Anne and Edith always had a rocky relationship. Anne felt that Edith showed favoritism to Margaret because she was older, cleverer, and more admirable. When we look at Anne's relationship with Margaret, it was mediocre at first, but improves over time as they are compelled to confide in each other during uncertain circumstances. Fritz Pfeffer, a German dentist, joined the Secret Annex a few months after Anne's and Peter's family did. Anne affectionately granted Fritz the nickname Albert Dussel, which translates to idiot. Anne didn't like him much. When we come to Peter of the Van Pels, Anne is barely acquainted with him at first, but upon familiarizing herself with him, they connect over the fact that both of them didn't have good parental figures. In Anne's case, it was her poor relationship with Edith, and in Peter's, his parents neglected him. This develops into a friendship, and eventually, a relationship. When Anne informed her father of her relationship with Peter, he disapproved because he thought it would be unwise to start romantic affairs in such close quarters, where it was never possible to be far apart from each other. Anne rebuffs Otto's advice and continues her romantic endeavour with Peter. In the time Anne spent in the secret annex, although she changed and developed as a person, in the end she still felt unsure of herself. She wasn't sure what sort of character she should project onto herself. She didn't know whether to act witty with her family or present a stern and serious attitude. Anne, although she dived into a relationship with Peter eagerly, was later hesitant to continue it. She tries to back off, but Peter doesn't want to let go. So in the end, it didn't matter what she decided to do, because on the morning of August 4, 1944, members of Hitler's protection squads broke into the secret annex and arrested the 8 people inside, and is transported to Auschwitz, then another concentration camp, Bergen-Belsen. She dies as a result of the typhus epidemic, which spread as a result of the horrendous hygienic conditions there. Everyone Anne knew from the annex died except Otto Frank, who dedicated the rest of his life to sharing his daughter's diary around the world.